Our studios at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Of course, the executive order number 7 is still getting a lot of attention. Of course, the political environment is really big out there, a lot of political conversations. But of course, we don't want to step all over the economic issues because of the political situation we have on our hands in the run up to the elections in less than 3 weeks from now. So the executive order number 7 relating to the road implementation or road infrastructure tax order for the private sector. This is President Buhari's first major handshake with the big names in the private sector looking into the big side of the economy. And that's the conversation. Let's bring into the conversation Celestine Okeke, who is the team lead at CEDI. He's live to us from our Abuja studios. He's having this conversation with us. Let's raise this conversation, Celestine. Good morning. It's good to have you on the program. Now, this handshake with the private sector by the president via the executive order, what's your initial thought about it, and how do you think this will help build this critical infrastructure that the private sector, businesses, and everyone sorely needs?
Thank you, Boston, for having me again. Good morning. My first impression is that it's a good initiative, but let's not lose sight of the fact that we've gotten to this point because the economy has not been doing well. That is why we're looking for an executive order to drive road construction in Nigeria. But given where we are presently, it's a good initiative. But let's also bear in mind that companies are going to reduce their tax liability, those who participate in delivering on the roads. They will reduce their tax liability to government, which will also reduce government revenue in the next 2, 3, 4 years, depending on the length of the contracts. So while these roads will be constructed, government will also be faced with reducing revenue. So we have to go back and look at how we can support significant and sustainable economic growth so that as revenue from these big companies will be reducing due to the roads they'll be building for us, we'll be able to make up any revenue from other sources. Yes.
Well, this is a very delicate balancing. But again, implementing this executive order number 7, if you take it a little bit down beyond the big names like flour mills, like Dangote, like those big companies, if you take it down to the industrial estates that we have across the country, whether in Kano, in Aba, for example, in Lagos, in Ibadan, and also in Port Harcourt. And again, the government is creating more special economic zones, and road infrastructure is very key to them. How do you think this will be for those who need the small and medium enterprises business, which are under your, which you watch very closely on a daily basis? How does it benefit them?
It will benefit micro, small, and medium enterprise because MSMEs feed from bigger companies. MSMEs don't stand alone. They don't have a space they are restricted to operating. If you go to Apapa, the road connecting the entire Apapa stretch to the port, MSMEs still do businesses on that road. So it will benefit them a lot. But like we said, if you look at the industrial clusters in Nigeria, especially for somewhere like Aba, the question will then be what private companies will be willing to construct roads within the Aba metropolis or within the area market area. Typically, you have the Nigerian breweries and Guinness that have big businesses there. Will they want to partake in this with this order? Will they want to put their funds in this order? And also, we are approaching an election year in which most times big businesses like to wait and see what happens after the election. But by and large, it's a good intervention that will spur road construction, which is a critical infrastructure businesses need because it will reduce cost. In the last 2, 3 years, the cost for moving, say, a 20-foot container from Lagos to Kaduna went up for like 500%. You might think it's a big business challenge. It is not, because these goods they move from Lagos to Kaduna are goods that small businesses will end up trading in. It's a good intervention, but we also have to look at the fact that we need to be very careful how it's going to be implemented. Like, for instance, the Minister of Finance said the M&E framework that will be used will be part what we have with the Federal Ministry of Power Works and Housing, packed what we have with the BPE, and packed what we have with the Financial Intervention Infrastructure, which is shared by the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Agency. So one other question is, at what point are we going to have a harmonized M&E framework that guides the cost of the project, the duration of the project, and every other little detail that will come with this project? Because you are coming with an intervention that is good, that is threatening to take food off some government officials who are used to manipulating contracts as Minister of Works and Housing. So you also need to put in safeguards that they will not transfer into this project and begin to frustrate the private sector organization that want to take part in the project.
Okay, so how do we leverage this? Is there an eye-opener here for state governments? Do you think the federal government has opened the window? Then perhaps at some point down the line, state governments could begin to leverage on this initiative. For example, Ogun State, if you look at the Agbara Industrial Estate, for example, on the way to Badagry, that very vast expanse, do you think this could be done at state levels? Do you think state government is to be an incentive for them?
Yeah, it opens up a window for state governments to play into, but you need to understand the fact that what is taken as priority at the federal level may not be priority for the state government. So let me break it down a bit. Federal government has in the last 2 years tried to intervene so much on roads to the extent of taking the Sukuk bond, which they took the first, and the second one which they're about deploying now. So federal government has taken road construction as a priority for them. So they're going this extra mile to do the executive order. The question then will be, are state governments also thinking in this line? Is the state government thinking road construction is a priority to the extent that it will want to forgo revenue that it would have used for other purposes into road? In Kogi State, for instance, I don't know as of today, but between Wednesday last week to Monday this week, which is yesterday, MTN has been shut down in the state capital and some other neighboring town because MTN is owing the state government over 300 million and they've not been able to pay. So you can imagine if the state government would just say, okay, take 50% of this money, put it into road construction in the roads that make for economic growth in Kogi State. We will give you a tax rebate or give you some incentive. It will go a long way. But why the federal government is looking at road construction as a priority, we need to ask state government if they are also thinking is a priority for them. If they take it as a priority, then they can begin to approach companies that are operating in the state to say, look, knock off 50% of your tax liability over the next 5, 6, 7 years. Invest it in these critical roads that will support economic development.
Celestine, why would state government not be interested in road construction? It's amazing you talking about this because we all thought folks just campaign that they're going to build roads and do everything. And why won't they do it? They need it for industries. They need it for commerce. Even if you're talking about a state that is largely almost 100% agrarian, they still need to move this farm produce out of the farms and into major towns and cities. So they need the roads. This is a big incentive for them to latch on and declare their own executive order number 7.
So if you ask me that question, I will explain something I've been trying to say for a long time. Across all the states in Nigeria, including the FCT, agenda is not set for state government by the citizens. So you have governors come in. Most times, the commissioners they appoint are people who are extremely loyal to them, who can't even challenge them. So whatever the governor says he wants to do, everybody is tagging along with the governor. I'll mention 2 roads that I think are important across 2 states that have been abandoned. One is in Kaduna State. The road that cuts from Mando through the Air Force Base that takes you out of Kaduna town, if you are coming from Kano and the rest, that's Nnamdi Azikiwe Expressway. That road has deteriorated so badly that you hardly can move on that road. It's a road you would expect the Kaduna State government to take as a priority and begin to look on how they will fix, but that has not been done. The road from Lokoja to Okene, which is a heavily used road that takes traffic from the east, the west, into Kogi to Abuja here. That road is terribly bad. The state government has not found it a priority. Now, I'm not questioning they are taking it as a priority or not, but that's what I'm just saying this to reinforce the fact that except until citizens begin to set agenda for government to say, look, these are the priorities we need to work on. State governments will continue to be at liberty to decide if road is what they want to do, if street light, for instance, is what they want to do, or if buying expensive Land Cruiser Jeeps for traditional rulers or political appointees are what they want to do. So we need to move from when government sits and set agenda for themselves to when citizens begin to set agenda for government so that we can define and say what is the priority.
Celestine, that's very interesting. If you buy jeeps for traditional rulers or political appointees, no problem, but they need good roads to drive them on. That's this between the chicken and the egg. Which comes first? Thank you very much. Let's continue this conversation some other time. Celestine Okeke, who is a team lead at SEEDI from Abuja Studios, when we come back after the break. The Standard Organization of Nigeria has been setting standards. What's the milestone? We have an exclusive with the Director General, Aboluma. And of course, before that, we'll talk about the business of commodities. What's in the news box for you?